Your Notre Dame live stream will begin soon. Thanks for watching.
Welcome everyone from the Rex and Alice Martin Media Center here in Corbett Family Hall on the campus of the University of Notre Dame. My name is Lou Nani, and we're really grateful that you've chosen to take some time to be with us virtually this afternoon or morning, depending on where you're tuning in from. I think we have a great discussion for all of you today, but let me begin with just a few comments. We have been dealing with this horrific pandemic, and then in this past week, we have experienced tremendous social upheaval with the racial unrest and all of the violence that has ensued. This is a time where it really tears at the fabric of our nation, and we need to pray for the soul of our nation. I can tell you that here on campus, like I'm sure in many of your homes, we are all grappling with how we can individually respond in the most constructive and effective ways, as well as how we collectively at Notre Dame can be a force for good, especially for all those who are victimized by racism and experience the marginalization that characterizes much of their lives, and especially by the recent incidents that have occurred. So this is a time of great soul searching for all of us, and be assured of our prayers and that they be followed with actions. We are working here on campus now to prepare to welcome students back on August 10th. And I know there's been some questions about whether or not we'll be doing the testing of our students. I can assure you that people are working furiously behind the scenes, round the clock here on campus, to prepare for welcoming students back for the start of classes on August 10th. And there are teams that are working from a medical perspective. There will be a major testing center that will be on campus. There will be electronic devices for students to be able to monitor themselves and to check in. There will be all kinds of protocols and processes, whether it's in the food service area or the social distancing and everything, but people are working round the clock to make sure that we can provide on August 10th for a safe and secure community during this pandemic. And you'll hear more details. They will be coming out soon. But I promise you, from this perspective, August 10th feels as if it were tomorrow. I want to thank all of you who have contributed to the Student Emergency Relief Fund. One of the ways that we're trying to make a difference is to meet what we perceive to be a growing gap of $30 million in increased financial aid of our students due to the roughly 40 million people who are experiencing unemployment or their businesses are suffering. And we've raised $10 million to date through your generosity, and we've got 20 million more to go. Anybody interested, of course, 100% of those dollars will go to meet the needs of our students so they can continue their studies through graduation and to support their families in every which way. So we really appreciate it. You'll hear more appeals, or you could go to our website and check things out through the Student Emergency Relief Fund on the development page. We're really thrilled today to be joined by two outstanding leaders from the College of Science. First, Mary Galvin, who is the Dean of our College of Science, and she has led the college for the past 5 years. Welcome, Mary. And Nora Besansky, who is an endowed professor, the O'Hara Professor of Biology, and the Associate Chair of Evolutionary, Ecological, and Functional Genomics of Malaria Vectors. Now that's a title. I don't know a lot of what that means, but I know when it comes to genomics, I like my genomics to be functional. So that's a little inside joke. I don't even know what that means. But let's begin with Mary, if we could. Dean Galvin, can you share with us a little bit about your own personal background? Where did you grow up? And where in your childhood did you find this passion to become a scientist and ultimately an educator?
They're working on it.
Mary, can't hear you right now. I'm going to ask, are you on mute by any chance or not? She's not on mute. Okay. We're working here in the studio side to make sure.
Sorry.
There, now we can hear you. Okay, great. Let's take it from the top. Sorry.
All right. So I grew up in Seekonk, Massachusetts, Raleigh, Rhode Island, one of 7 children. My father had never finished 9th grade, and we were fairly poor. But my parents believed education was the most important thing in the world and insisted we'd all go to college. As a child, compared to my brother a year older and younger, I was the dumb one. I had trouble reading. They told my parents I wasn't college material. So I had no clue what science was or what a career in science was as a child. My passion developed later. Early on, all I knew is I could really do math. I liked math. I was good at math. And I think that led me into a route and a passion that's been wonderful.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. And Nora, similar question. Tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, and what were the influences that led you to this career in science?
So I grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland, which is a suburb of Washington, D.C., really, or it was a suburb in those days. So I came through the Montgomery County public school system, which at that time was probably one of the best in the country. I don't recall a science teacher that actually steered me to biology. And in fact, what I recall is a chemistry teacher who inadvertently steered me away from chemistry. My parents were not scientists. So where I came by my passion, I don't know, except to say that I grew up in a neighborhood without kids my own age, and completely opposite to the case with Mary, I was an only child. So I spent a lot of time alone, a lot of time outdoors. I was the type that wanted to turn over rocks and find whatever was under them. My parents were very tolerant of my very strange pets that included black widow spiders, a 4-inch long praying mantis that I kept on the draperies in my bedroom, and a homemade ant farm complete with queen that I dug up. My very first job as a high schooler was in the newly opened Smithsonian Institution Insect Zoo, where I was a docent. So.
Fascinating. Well, your parents are much better than Carmen and me, because we had a long argument last night with our 10-year-old daughter, the youngest of our 5, who was arguing vehemently for a bearded dragon, which she's not going to get, for the record. She's going to spend a little bit more time with our dog right now. But Mary, tell us a little bit. You went on amazingly from that background that you discussed to get your PhD in polymers and material science at MIT, while working your way through college with a side job. And then you go to work. You have this amazing background. You work in academia, you work in industry, for corporations, and then you work for the government. How does this path ultimately evolve and lead you to Notre Dame?
Well, I can't say I ever had a plan. And in some ways, I was very much a late bloomer, made a lot of silly decisions early in life. Went back to graduate school at MIT and worked full-time at Polaroid for 3 of the 4.5 years it took me to get a doctorate. I did it because luck, I guess, or God. When I was taking a class at MIT, I got introduced to someone who worked for Edward and Land at Polaroid, and I got asked to join his group. And I think I wasn't close to him. I didn't work intimately, but the few chances I got to see how he managed and his passion for science inspired me. Partway through the PhD, I was just in love with research. It was thrilling, and I knew I wanted a career doing research. So I left Polaroid. When I finished there at MIT, I went to Bell Labs and got to work with some of the best scientists in the nation and the world. I learned about collaborative research. It was pure joy. As Bell Labs started shrinking, I was asked to go start a materials science department with someone at Delaware. So I did that and spent 8 years doing the same type of research, but educating. And then had an interest on how do you make products out of the research I did, and was asked to join Air Products and was on their technology leadership team. Went to the government because I thought I could have more impact there. Ended up as a division director of NSF, and then was asked about Notre Dame. So I'm not someone who's had a plan in life. I'm more in the camp. If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. But among all of it, I really had tremendous opportunities and got to know fantastic people, and was thrilled with the science and research I could do.
That's a great story, and I think it's hopefully some of our students are there able to listen to your career path, because it isn't looking at the careers that you have chosen as stepping stones to the next opportunity. It's just doing what you're doing exceptionally well, and people come to you and ask you to do more. And I think many of our students would be better served listening to your story. So, Nora, tell us a little bit about your path as a student at Yale, and then your career and how it evolved and brought you 23 years ago to be a professor here at the University of Notre Dame.
So we have to start a little bit earlier. Oberlin College, where I was an undergraduate and I got my bachelor's in biology. Oberlin back then, and I think it's true today, had a special program between semesters that they called winter term. And it's an opportunity for the undergraduates to design their own independent research, or to find an internship to sort of explore what they want to do when they grow up, quote unquote. So my first winter term, I worked at the Smithsonian again, this time with a curator of Heteroptera, a fancy word that just means true bugs. I was lining up my second winter term. I really had a desire to work for the National Institutes of Health, and I was exploring the malaria section of the Laboratory of Parasitic Diseases. So trying to line this up, I made a phone call and didn't reach the person I was after, and I think either garbled my message or something got lost in translation. I ended up getting offered a summer job. And interestingly, the person who hired me was Robert Guadz. I don't know if you know the name, but he's a double domer. He got his bachelor's here in '62 and his PhD in '70. And that summer job turned into 3 successive summer jobs as a biological lab technician in the malaria branch, or section rather. And I can truly say that that was life-altering in every respect, because that's where I met my future husband, Frank Collins, who just retired last summer from his position here. And I also found my vocation, malaria research. So after that, I, believe it or not, applied to graduate school to Notre Dame. And at the time, there was a professor here, George Craig Jr., who's a world-renowned mosquito biologist and was the first faculty member to be elected to the National Academy at this university. He saw my application, he accepted me right away, offered me a very generous fellowship, and I respectfully declined because I had in mind to work with Jeffrey Powell at Yale. Now, guess what? Jeff Powell is also a Notre Dame alumnus who overlapped with Bob Guad's and shared with Bob this powerful mentoring experience with George Craig. He had done research and fallen in love with the mosquito that transmits dengue hemorrhagic fever and yellow fever virus, Aedes aegypti. So at the time I applied to work in Jeff's lab, he was doing really cutting edge work, trying to understand the genetic basis of how this mosquito transmits yellow fever. The problem is that was the pre-genomic era, and the tools just were not there to map such a complex genetic trait. So by the time I reached his lab, he had given up this project in utter frustration. And so my PhD in his lab was just continuing to work on the malaria mosquito that I've worked on ever since. Meanwhile, Frank, my husband, found a staff scientist position at the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta in the malaria branch. I eventually joined him in 1991. So, and we both had permanent positions there, staff scientist positions. So why would we leave? Well, one reason, and I'll tell you more later, but one reason is because Frank got antsy. He really wanted to lead and develop his own research program, which is what you do in academia, not at the Centers for Disease Control. So that put both of us on the job market in a difficult situation, because to find two academic positions in the same department where the two individuals are seen as performing very similar types of work, that was not easy. But a tragedy actually led to an opportunity. So George Craig died unexpectedly and suddenly of a heart attack in 1995. And Notre Dame was looking to replace his leadership and his legacy in vector biology. And when the invitation came to apply, we did, and the rest is history.
Wow.
So that's what happened.
Wow, what an incredible story. Notre Dame seemed to keep popping up, and one person after another, what some would call serendipity. Here at the university, we would call it providence. And to get both you and Frank, who I know was an extraordinary academic and researcher and leader as well, together was what a blessing for Notre Dame, and to be associated with you for all these years. Mary, when you've just finished your first 5-year term, and you were renewed to serve another 5 years recently as dean. Congratulations, and thank you for accepting that responsibility. Tell us, given your diverse background, why do you think you can, or what do you think you can do to take the College of Science to the next level?
Well, I'll tell you, I came to Notre Dame because I thought I could contribute to making it a preeminent research university. I just completely believe that the world needs a preeminent research university that combines the moral voice that our Catholic tradition gives us with a very strong technical voice. And my experience doing research, building a department at Delaware, seeing people across all sorts of disciplines at Bell Labs, where there were Nobel Prizes up and down the corridor my lab was on, I thought that maybe I could help, that I knew how to recruit people, I knew how the government worked and what they funded, and maybe I could contribute to something that I really think is important, to have the moral voice Notre Dame needs to have for this world to be the force for good, it also has to have an exceptionally strong technical voice. And that's what attracted me to it, along with working with students again. Maybe it's arrogance, Lou, that I thought I could help recruit the people, because I don't do the work. It's really the faculty that make the college and the university.
Well, you've said before, I know, Mary, that we can't have a moral voice unless we have a seat at the table for doing excellent research. And certainly, Nora, you have in the area of vector biology and mosquito-borne diseases with a focus on malaria, you have performed the highest levels of research and scholarship that has attracted considerable acclaim, not just from the academy, but from foundations that want to put an end to malaria. We somehow don't, in the United States, fully appreciate the impact of malaria across the world. Would you tell us a little bit about its impact, and tell us a little bit about what you're working on and the progress that's being made to limit the impact of malaria?
I have a two-part answer to your question. First, one of the things as a young graduate student, I didn't have my mature brain back then. So what excited me into the field of malaria research back then was the following. I mentioned that Jeff Powell had given up on his cutting edge research because the tools weren't there. But in the early 80s, there was a revolution, really, conceptual and technological, that changed all of biomedical research. I refer here to the rise of recombinant DNA technology, genetic engineering of the model insect, the fruit fly Drosophila melanogaster, technological advances in DNA sequencing. So these are tools that were developed that changed the face of cancer research, study of gene expression, development, evolution, population genetics, and not least the science of vector biology, right? So we referred to it back then as molecular insect science, which really was a set of tools that offered the potential for rapid advancement. And this was very attractive to a young, ambitious graduate student that I was then. Now I would answer the question a little bit differently. So, malaria is, maybe it's not fair anymore to call it a neglected tropical disease, but there are a set of devastating diseases that affect humans that we refer to as neglected tropical diseases. And they kill 700,000 people at least a year. Malaria alone in Africa kills 400,000 people every year, children below the age of 5. Now, I could sort of compare the devastating toll of that with our recent horrible experience with COVID in the US, where we lost 100,000 lives. Malaria is 4 times worse and never ending, right? We don't have a vaccine, not an effective one. But the thing is that malaria is, at least in principle, a treatable disease. There are drugs that, if people could get to them, could prevent them from dying. But malaria and these other diseases are diseases of poverty, and the people that are suffering don't have health clinics that they can get to, or if they can get to them, they can't afford the treatment. Now, the work that I and many others do in vector biology, targeting the actual mosquitoes or other insects that are doing the transmission, is probably our best avenue to reduce transmission of these diseases. But it's so much more than just science. right? It's about social justice. And there's no better place on earth to do vector biology than Notre Dame. That reason.
Thank you. That's incredibly moving. I know, Nora, you said that when you began your research, it was about 1.5 million people dying annually of malaria, and through your efforts and the efforts of many others, certainly it's been reduced to 400,000, but 400,000 annually is far unacceptable and far too prevalent still. And there's a lot of work to be done. You know, what we're seeing with COVID-19 right now is we know many of the families. We know people who've been afflicted by this disease. And I have no doubt you've gotten to know many people over the years afflicted by malaria, and they love their children. They love their family members just as much as we love ours. So thank you for your commitment and bringing research at the highest levels to be of service to humankind, and especially people that we don't see every day, that aren't necessarily our immediate neighbors, but to whom we are brothers and sisters in Christ just as much. So, Mary, let me ask you about this coronavirus pandemic, and if you could just tell me how has that impacted the College of Science and the laboratories and the research and and how we're trying to respond.
Wow, it was a huge impact initially. We, in a very short period of time, had to transition all the classes, the laboratory classes, to online. We had to figure out how to shut down or put into hibernation research facilities in a way that we could rapidly bring them up as we reopened. I think the faculty and the students were fantastic. I've seen student evaluations from how the online classes went. They were great. The faculty quickly adapted. They took lab courses and filmed them and sent data to the students. The math department kept online tutoring rooms available. But it was a huge change. Now, thank God, we are reopening the labs and research is beginning again. But it was a huge team effort that Notre Dame research, faculty in the College of Science and College of Engineering and students all were engaged in. And for how impactful COVID has been and the damage it's caused in the country, I think Notre Dame made some very quick and important decisions that protected our students and our faculty and put us in a position where research and the education can continue.
Great. Nora, this question could be for you or you as well, Mary, either one. This just came in via email here. One of our President's Circle and members and has asked that he says, I have a 13-year-old daughter who loves algebra and science. And this father would like to know, what is Notre Dame doing to encourage more women, you two being tremendous role models, to pursue degrees and careers in science? Any thoughts?
I think we have a fantastic example in Nora and in other faculty members that women can do it. There is an association for women in science and engineering that also runs seminars, workshops to mentor. Actually, in the College of Science, more than half of our undergraduates are female. And in engineering right now, I think 30% of the undergraduate students are women. So I'm kind of proud of Notre Dame. I think we still have room to grow. Our new provost-elect is a female, and I think it's a wonderful place to be a woman in science. And with that, I'll let Nora.
Well, the faculty in biology are, I'm not going to say predominantly women, but we have a lot of women mentors. And I think we do a great job of mentoring women undergraduates and women graduate students and even women postdoctoral fellows.
Well, let me just say that
by example
yeah.
and by concerted effort.
Yeah.
Let me just say to the gentleman who wrote that you want to, I'm sure, bring your 13-year-old daughter to campus when the coronavirus subsides. I know that either just knowing Nora or Mary, any on our team would be happy to talk with your daughter and be a kind of a living witness of what a career in science and could be. Mary, we've just had some really exciting news for the College of Science and for the University of Notre Dame. Nora was recently elected to membership in the National Academy of Science, which is just the pinnacle, one of the highest honors that you could possibly receive in the field. Give us a little bit of the context of what that means and what is the significance of that honor for Nora and for Notre Dame?
It is a tremendous honor. It is the top scientists across the nation, and very, very few get in. So it's a big milestone for Notre Dame, a great honor for Nora, and it's something I have to say I had nothing to do with. This is all Nora, her brilliance, her scientific talent, the work she's done. It's fantastic. And I'm just lucky enough and privileged enough to be here when she was awarded membership in the National Academy. It does have significance for the college. We want to be a preeminent research university. We want to get back to that, having a huge technical voice so we can have an even bigger moral voice. And having people like Nora here at Notre Dame raises our visibility. It tells the world that Notre Dame is a place you can do excellent science and have a great career. So what she's done really is blessed us all, but it's totally her achievement. And congratulations, Nora. I can't be happier for you, for the college, and for Notre Dame.
My voice of congratulations, Nora. What an incredible honor for you personally and for the College of Science and for the university, the whole Notre Dame family for that matter. But there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into that. And I think that sometimes people from the outside think that that faculty members, teach a course here or teach a course there, that it can be, a bit of a relaxing lifestyle by comparison. But tell us a little bit about the sweat and the equity that goes into your work and the work of other faculty by both being a great teacher and mentor to our students, but a researcher who is in service to humanity. And what did this award mean to you as a reflection of all those sacrifices?
Oh my goodness. So this was a lifetime coming, right? I mean, it's based on decades of really hard work, teaching, mentoring, research, but also, I've been mentored very well, and this recognition, right? I didn't do it myself. I didn't do it all myself. I was supported by all my undergraduate researchers, my graduate students, my postdoctoral fellows, and not least, right, the support staff, my support team, and the university. So you can't do good, hard, creative, original research or teaching unless you have support. And I had all of that.
Yeah.
So,
and I know you've made terrible sacrifices, and I don't think people realize how many hours you are in the lab, how how much time you take away from your research to be an excellent teacher and mentor. And I know that it never stops. And it's something where you're not working 40 hours a week, you're not working 60, it's more like 80 hours a week. And I'm not sure that people appreciate that the true role of faculty commitment that goes into our students and into your respective research. Now, the only favor I'd like to ask of you, if you'd come into my office someday, and now National Academy of Science member, and draw some of those scientific diagrams in the background of my office, so when I'm on all these Zoom calls, people will think I'm a lot smarter than I am, and that doesn't take much. So I love those diagrams in the background. That'll be a separate discussion. Some questions that we, okay, yeah, please.
I'm going to have to teach you about functional genomics first.
Okay, good. Okay, good. That's a good starting point. Mary, we got a few questions from our audience, and the first is from Jerry O'Grady, a good friend, class of '63, Baden Guild member and generous supporter from Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. And he says that I have heard several times that Notre Dame ranks #2 in medical school acceptances, and that Notre Dame graduates account for 1% of doctors in the United States. Are those statistics correct? That comes from the fact that Jerry knows that I'm prone to hyperbole. So he's questioning the veracity of my words. Let me know, am I accurate or are we accurate? Could you give us some insight?
I can't say we're #2 in the number of students getting in. What I can absolutely say is Notre Dame, thanks to the leadership of Father Jim Foster and Assistant Dean Kathleen Kohlberg, is fantastic at getting students into medical school. The acceptance rate of those who apply from Notre Dame has been 86 to 87% in the last few years while I'm here. That's twice the national average. And I do believe that roughly 1% of all the first year entering class of medical school students comes from Notre Dame. So we have a great reputation of having undergrads go to medical school.
Fantastic. And here's another question, Mary, I think directed to you, but Nora, feel free to weigh in. And this comes from Logan Barrios. From Marrero, Louisiana, and he's a rising sophomore at Notre Dame. How should undergraduate students go about contacting professors about being able to participate in research and be a part of their labs? Okay,
I'm going to answer that broadly. At the present moment, we're just reopening labs, so there aren't undergraduates in as we begin to reopen, but there will be soon. My best advice to an undergraduate is to spend a little time understanding what your passion is, what you love. Look at what the faculty members in the department or the area you want to work in do. How does it excite you? Learn about it and go talk to them. Mm-hmm. Also, if you have a faculty member you've formed a bond with in a class, you can go ask them, who would you recommend I work with? What kind of research is done here? And how could I get into a lab? We do have a wonderful reputation of undergraduate students doing research at Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. Almost all of them spend some time in a lab, and more there are major publications in Science or Nature, which are some of the top journals. So I would say talk to the faculty, seek advice on who is doing work in an area you're passionate about.
Thank you. That's very, very helpful. And you'll find out that Notre Dame professors across the board are incredibly responsive. And if they don't have the answers, they'll direct you to the right people. They want to help. And I think you'll find that pretty much across the board. One final question for each of you. What is your hope going forward for the College of Science at Notre Dame? And let's start with you, Nora.
Oh my gosh. I'm not sure I can say it any differently than what Mary has already said. You know, that we should be preeminent. That we should, what was it that Father John said when he was inaugurated as president? What we should fear is thinking too small, along those lines. I mean, I think we have a way to go, and let's boldly go there.
Great. Mary?
I think that was brilliantly said, Nora. That is one of my goals, to have more people like Nora, to just nurture stellar scientists and have them do their research here and be top in all the fields. I also have a dream on the undergraduate level that we educate all our undergraduate students, even those who come in less prepared in science or who are first generation students, and enable them to fulfill their dream. And as such, we've started a scholars program, science and engineering scholars, to really enable all the students who are exceptionally bright. They don't get into Notre Dame if they're not. To support them and give them what they need to fulfill their dreams and end up being a force for good in the world. So those are my hopes.
I know that's been a personal passion of yours, and thank you for your leadership on that front, Mary. I know that for many students that are coming from socioeconomic disadvantaged backgrounds, it's the STEM disciplines that are the most difficult for them to thrive in. And the support systems need to be there, not just in other aspects of their life, but also academically, so that they're not weeded out, that they're able to thrive. And you've taken great leadership on that front. Nora, we are so proud to have you as a leader on our faculty, Mary as a leader of our faculty in the College of Science. It's been really inspiring to be with both of you today, and thank you for serving as such exemplary role models for the Notre Dame family and beyond. The fact that you are so dedicated to our students, but at the same time, you're trying to make a difference and cure world diseases that are affecting so many people who live on the margins of society, and to make this a better place for us all. I want to ask all of you that joined us today to come back next week, same place, same time. We will gather at noon on May 10th, and we will be joined by Kristen Valentino, a faculty leader from the William J. Shaw Center for Children and Families. She's a member of the psychology faculty, and this is during this time of coronavirus. You can imagine the numbers of abuse in domestic situations, children that are suffering from depression and anxiety and so forth have gone up, and she's going to talk about their research and their work in those areas. So join us next Wednesday at noon, again this time. And as is customary for our programs, if all of you would just join with us together, we'd like to close this program in prayer to Our Lady, and especially for all those who are afflicted by this deadly virus, those that are afflicted by malaria and other mosquito-borne diseases, and those that are the victims of the racial unrest and discrimination and racism that has so far too long plagued our country. Together we say, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Take care. God bless. Thank you.